name is Aminat, and I'm from Philosophy Department. We're here to talk about drug abuse. We're here to invite one of our lecturers to talk about the use of drug abuse, Mr. Dr. Sharomi. So, sir, what can you tell us about drug abuse, sir?
Well, drug abuse is one of the pains of contemporary society. And it's one of the major challenges that youths in society today are facing. It's broader than youth, but because in Nigeria, in Africa, youths make up the largest population. So it's a very big problem because a very good number of youths are into the use of illicit drugs and abuse of drugs, and that is now making it one of the very big social problems for us. So drug abuse, which essentially is a part of a larger aspect called substance abuse, is the use of illicit drugs or the use of prescription drugs wrongly, maybe for reasons that they were not prescribed for or for any other thing apart from why it should be used. So if it's used when it should not be used, it now performs functions it should not be performing, and it has multiple effects in the society. There are the health effect on the user, there's the social effect, there's the financial effect, and criminality, and so so many things. So the effect of drug abuse is so much and can be looked at from different perspectives.
So how does social media influence drug abuse among young people?
Well, social media has brought a lot of things closer to home. Formerly, before we had social media where you can just get your mobile device and get access to anything, social media has brought that closer. So there's one of the problems is it brings drugs that can be used closer to the people that want to use them. And then there are some celebrities that the youths they see using some things, or even in music videos. People think the exposure to drugs and people smoking or doing illicit things in music videos, they think it's just for the effect of their video. But a larger effect of it is that it corrupts a mind that never had such in mind. So when you see such in the video and you see a musician using it, maybe you have a flair for the musician one way or the other, you now get to see it, and then so the effect of social media, like, is one of the negative effects of social media. Of course, we cannot use one big one to say social media is negative generally, no, but one of its main negative aspects is drug abuse, because it brings it closer. It introduces innocent minds to illicit drugs.
So how can schools effectively educate students about the dangers of drug abuse?
Well, the responsibility goes beyond that of schools. Schools have their own roles to play, but there are some people that have already fallen into this unfortunate situation even before they get into school. So it now becomes difficult for school. That's why you'd hear in the media today that schools are trying to introduce toxicology tests for students even before they are admitted. And that's one of the ways schools are trying to manage it. So if you have to go for a toxicology test and you come out positive, which already means you are on drugs, perhaps because of that, schools should not offer such student admission. So when some intending students hear that because of toxicology results that came out positive, some students were denied admission, perhaps it might make them know that you are not supposed to take drugs, because if you take drugs, you are not going to gain admission into the higher institution. So that's one way that schools can do it. Let all tertiary institutions, federal, state, private, all of them, let them introduce toxicology tests for students before admission. And then they can also, those that have already admitted, they can also introduce it for them. And then those who are now found wanting, depending on the level, they can warn you, then they will educate you. The guidance and counseling unit, I know every university, for instance, in Olabisi Onabanjo University here, we have a very vibrant every student, even from your 100 level, would have had a contact with the counseling unit and the DSA office, and that's part of what they do. So we have a very, very vibrant one here. So they would introduce the toxicology effect. If you're already a student, they'll call you, they would invite you, they would educate you on the dangers, because the effects are innumerable. It will affect your studies, it will affect your health, it will affect your family, and definitely it's going to affect the future. So the school has the responsibility of counseling, treatment for those who have gone far, and then if it now becomes unmanageable, or maybe the students cannot manage, they would invite the parents, and then they will have a round table to let the student know the consequence. But if it becomes a bigger problem and cannot manage, such a student can be expelled from the school, or perhaps rusticated for 1 semester or 2, so that you will have an understanding of the consequence of what drugs can do to you. So these are part of the ways that schools can curb the effect of drug abuse.
How does drug abuse affect relationship with family and friends?
The effect is very negative because, one, it affects the health of the individual, of the user. And when it affects the health of the user, the parents would not rest. Of course, no parent would hear that their child is sick and then would not want to pay attention to it, even if it is because of drug, or even if the child is the cause of such sickness. That feeling, that parental feeling, that human feeling in us would want everybody to get involved in the treatment of the student, of the affected person. Also, it's going to have financial effect. Treating the consequence of drug abuse is very expensive. Very expensive. If you go to, they have listened to some researches from the neuropsychiatric hospital in Aro in Abeokuta, or in Yaba Left, famously called Yaba Left, where the cost of managing a drug user is very effective. That's going to have an effect on the family, and then it could also influence other persons in the family. If let's say one of the child in the family is using it, and perhaps it's not immediately noticed, a younger one can see and get influenced by seeing his younger brother or his elder brother or his elder sister using, and that's another negative effect, because he or she can also start using it from there. So the effect on the family is numerous: social, financial, health, and criminal. If most drugs, for instance, a user, if you cannot afford it later, you may have to go into criminality to be able to afford it, or using it might even influence you to go into criminality, and that becomes a problem for the society, for the family. So the effects and the consequence on the family is very broad.
What success stories have you seen of young people overcoming their addiction?
Well, I've listened to, because there's on Nigeria Info, which is one of the popular radio stations in Lagos. They have a health show that they do on Thursdays, and they've brought persons who have survived drug abuse. They've brought them, and I was fortunate to listen to that show that day, and the process was long, the process was painful, and it had several effects on the individual, on the family, and even on the society, because that individual that I listened to the show had already been involved in criminality. But after a long while, because it took I think they said it was between 9 months to a year, through professional treatment at the neuropsychiatric hospital in Yaba. So the person, at least the family, was rich enough to manage the situation, and the person was able to overcome it. So the victim, or the person, the user, was the one who was on the show to talk about the effect. He lost several years in the university, he lost friends, he had health issues that he's managing even after using, health issues that were as a result of the use of that drug, but he has to continue managing them after he has been managed for health, for the drug use on his own. So yes, it's a success story, but it's not a good success story at the end of the day. So the best thing that society should focus on is prevention, rather than looking for how to later find a solution to it. So the best cure to any disease is to prevent such disease. Well, they should think of their future. They should think of their future and do away with drugs. There is no benefit. Whatever pleasure you derive from it is very temporal. There is no benefit, no short-term benefit, no long-term benefit. Just a temporal benefit of feeling high. Maybe it makes you be able to be bold, to talk about, to say things you wouldn't have said in your normal senses, or you just want to feel among some negative friends. So the advice is stay away from drugs, stay away from bad company, stay away from bad company. And the advice now goes beyond just the youth. It also goes to the family. It goes to the parents. We should try and cultivate that habit of familyhood, where there is concern. You know, a child that knows that, oh, my dad has gone out even before I woke up in the morning, my mom has gone out even before I woke up in the morning, nobody would know whatever I do, I would have slept before they get back from the office, would be free to do whatever he wants within the space that he has. But if there's that family time, if you know that, oh, somebody my parents will soon be back from work and they will see me doing this and it will be a terrible thing and I could be punished for it and everything, they would be able to control. So family has a role to play. Society also has a role to play. The neighbors, there's the Yoruba adage that says, Oju kolon bimo, igba oju ni nwo. It's not just the parents who give birth to a child that looks after the child, but the whole community. So that communal responsibility also has to be woken up. So the advice goes to the youth, it goes to the family, the parents, and other siblings, and it goes to the society as a whole, so that we'll be able to do away with the negative effect. There is no positive effect in illicit use of drugs. Negative effect, but it can always be overcome with time and through proper management.
Thank you very much.
It's a pleasure. Thank you so much.